The Institute for the Study of Pig States presents the first International Psychoimmunology and Psychobiology Research Symposium. Paradigm Shift, Conflicting Worldviews, presented by Dr. Kirsten Lykkegaard.
So Kirsten is also the co-director of research of the Institute for the Study of Pig States. She's a doctor of veterinary medicine, holds a PhD in pharmacology, and has 17 years experience in medical research, focusing on appetite regulation, obesity, and type 2 diabetes. She was trained by the Institute in 2015, and not only are Grant and Kirsten co-directors of research, but they're also partners. So, Kirsten, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, guys, for all being here today. It is really quite a number who have shown up. Thank you for that. I'm going to talk about paradigm shift and conflicting worldviews. And I think this is really an important topic, not just for our institute, but this is actually what is causing the world not to move forward. If you think about, if we all focused on the one thing that's important in this world is to get a better world, the way it's running right now with everything from environment to political and war issues, everything boils down to that conflicting worldviews are actually getting in the way of focusing on the real target of moving forward. And in this talk, I'll focus on my own experience with this, coming from my background as a researcher and into this paradigm here. And I will also move the talk towards what's coming up later today and tomorrow about moving some of our applications out into the world. From a personal perspective also, I think the research and collaboration with other researchers is part of what is a conflict in this. Okay, so Shane said that I come from the medical background, and I actually moved into this new paradigm because I was missing a more integrated way of looking at and understanding health problems, and also a stronger intent to find the root cause and not just to develop things that can, I mean, symptom treatment is fine if you can't do better than that, but really from a research perspective, solving the root cause was something that was at my heart. And even though that I'm very into this and very dedicated in this new field, I still struggle sometimes because of this scientific background. But not just my scientific background. You know, we all have traumas that set us up for making misinterpretations, and even my thought about bringing this, you know, when I go to conferences, or if I even think about talking to old colleagues about what I'm taking on here, it's like I feel this hostile interaction because it is so different, and I can feel that sets a barrier sometimes for me not to expose myself to these things. I don't have time enough also to take that struggle sometimes. So this is a quote from Thomas Kuhn, who has said a lot of things about science, and he says, "What a man sees depends both upon what he looks at and also upon what his previous visual conceptual experience has taught him." So that's in, again, relationship to my scientific background. I mean, if you think of any given model or thought you have about how the world is put together, a paradigm is the model that a scientist holds about a particular area of knowledge. And when you have a belief in a paradigm, you have internal psychological forces that causes the person to reject or ignore data that doesn't fit into their unconscious paradigm. So think about, you have all these thoughts or paradigms in the background and you're not aware of them. So a lot of times you find everything like logical and sensible the way they are. And so how do you, so say again, why we talk about this. So again, back to, it causes conflicts. And I don't know if everyone is aware that it's an internal conflict that this actually, to begin with, starts as, and you feel very uncomfortable inside, doubt, fear, disbelief, and anger even. But a lot of times it's so uncomfortable that you might project it out to an outer conflict with blaming and arguing. And that's what you see if you go to any government or a place where there's a lot of different opinions about things. And also what can happen is that you just either ignore or you blank that you actually have a problem, because I'll show you, I'll give you an example of one of those things. So what I'm going to focus on mostly on this talk is how it can get in the way of making new discoveries. So internally into this research that I'm doing with this new paradigm, being a researcher from the research field, the regular commonplace. And as a second thing, as we're talking later today and tomorrow, it also makes acceptance of breakthrough applications more difficult. It's the same issues that I'm going to talk about inside of me going on in everyone, even in the audience here today, in you guys. You might find that some of what's said is causing some kind of like, inside of yourself. And if you think about it, it's just these clashes of thoughts or belief systems inside that's going wrong. So how do you know that you have such a thing going on? Actually, sometimes you might not know. And that's again because your belief seems logical and sensible, so you don't question them. And one thing that I have seen a lot of times, and I feel sometimes in myself, which puzzles me, is that you think you have a feeling inside, but it's not the first thing that you recognize. You recognize something going on in the outer world. And what happens is actually you have something going on that's unpleasant, and you scan your surroundings for a reason why you feel that way. And you pick up one thing, and they might not be related, but then you have something to blame for it, in a sense. So what I find, I'll give you some examples here, that I have argued with Grant, I will admit that. And one recent example is actually it was Shane and I, we were in the same room here about 5 days ago, and Grant was speaking with one of the other people on our panel, and they were discussing, because we've done some work on the coronavirus, that if we came up with a good treatment for that, how would we proceed with that, because the whole globe needs this, and we're only 60 therapists and we can't deliver this. So Grant was just positively, happily talking away, saying, oh, we can put this into a video and about 50% of all people will be able to have a success with that. And I could just feel uncomfortable coming into my body, and I registered it. I walked over to the kitchen, turned around, and I could see Shane also reacted. But we actually didn't react to the same reason fully. Afterwards, we talked about it, and I know that I reacted because it was like, promising 50%, what if, you couldn't deliver that? So I actually healed some stuff on it, and then I could hear when I went back and went over the conversation that what Grant was saying was the concept of bringing this out is possible. Whether it's 50% or something was not, all of a sudden that vanished, whether that was important. It was just a principle. And I know that Shane said that he actually heard it as if it was all treatments that, of course, they could be delivered, and we all know that they can't. So it was like Shane was hearing something or picking up something or assuming something that wasn't actually there, which takes me to the next one, selective hearing or reading. I had this really, really weird experience. I was in my early days of doing this work. It's about 4 or 5 years ago. And all of a sudden, I had this weird feeling that because my daughter had some medical issues in her early years that were pretty severe. And all of a sudden, I had this feeling that I'd made it all up, that it wasn't true. So I went back and read her medical records, and sure enough, it to me looked like I had made it up. And then it turns out there's something that's called a core issue that actually is a hidden belief about yourself that you're not aware of. And I found that was what was going on in me, and got the opportunity to heal it. And then I went back and read the medical record, and then I could actually focus. It was so weird. I could focus on all the words, and it was like everything was back into place about reality. So now I could see that, yes, it was severe. It's okay now, blah, blah, blah. but it's how distorted you can get. It's really weird. Then the third one here is an unwillingness to let go of a belief. And I picked this woman here because it's like you have the speeder and the brake on at the same time. So you have, even if you have data or personal experience that contradicts that you should not believe it, or that you actually should believe it, you're unwilling. So you have like this going on inside of you. It's very uncomfortable. And say, for example, what are you? I just said unstable internet here. Maybe you can check if actually sound goes. If sound goes through.
Okay.
Yeah. So this uncomfortableness, I can tell you that, for example, with my background in research, some of the things that we do are not scientifically validated or verified. So, for example, the fungal that we talk about that causes voices, the primary cell, where is it in the body? All these things. And so the primary cell model, all of a sudden, even though I've used it and we extract a lot of our work and we get results from doing so, it's really weird. And underneath that, there's some really horrific feelings of death, and I mean just stuff that you don't want to feel. So this reaction is much more. It comes out of that unwillingness to feel that. So instead of feeling that, you push away. And the other one that everyone knows is the avoidance. In the Institute, we actually have a saying that, oh, by the way, I need to go feed the cat, even though you don't have a cat. So we have a lot of overweight, happy imaginary cats in the Institute. And just as an example, this slide, the one that I'm talking about now was actually the last one that I did in this slideshow, because it was the most difficult one, and it had me confront these things that I now explain to you. So I would like to bring, that was just personal experience. So from a more academic viewpoint, you can say, what is a person and how is a person functioning to function right, you can say. And Gregory Bateson, who was an anthropologist, he was studying a lot of different cultures, among others native people, and came up with description of how if you're integrated, you have a purpose in life. You have some beliefs and some values. You also have some competences that matches, that you can move these things into the field. If all of these things is in alignment, your behavior will reflect your purpose, your belief, your values, everything. And you're situated in an environment, say an office or a university or whatever, that allows all of this to come true. If you have inner conflicts, there's something in this pyramid that's not in alignment. So if you say this is, for example, it could be me, it could be anyone in the Institute with this new paradigm. And we go out in the world and we meet someone who's in the current paradigm. And I have a great example of that. Actually, we went and talked to, she was a psychologist and was in this institution where they were treating psychiatric patients, among others, people with voices. And so we were introducing how easily you can do treatment on individual voices, very easy and very safe. And I could just feel as we were working along or into the conversation that all of a sudden it was about identity. It was like talking about this, which is you can say a competence down here. It's something that you can do to achieve. We want to make humanity better. We want to ease up pain for people. And so that's our purpose. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, she said, like that, well, that would make me lose my job, So in reality, what she was doing was, she might want to have better lives, I hope so, for the people that she works with. But there was a conflict inside of her that made her go like that. And it was like an instant in this conversation, and the conversation could have ended right there. She was so afraid of losing her job if this came. Whereas we're like, well, you could just have more patients, I mean, or do other things. There's so many people who suffer. So just back to the paradigm again. I'm just putting the slide in to just get back in line to when you have a paradigm, you ignore or reject data that doesn't fit into your paradigm, which is this famous cartoon you've seen before. It's all the researchers with blindfolded, and they're looking at the same thing but picking out different items from it. They're all true, but it's not the biggest. It's not the whole picture as such. So, and that's in a sense a lot of what's going on. The medical field has divided them or compartmentalized disciplines into these categories. I'd say these are all from most of them, maybe not the pathogens down here, or they can be acute, but a lot of things is chronic diseases that this is taken care of. And I'd have to say that the medical discipline of acute treatment of lesions, car accidents, it works perfect. It's like in that concept, everything is integrated. Here's a body that's hurt. But in these, the limited interaction has probably limited solving of different issues. Although this field here in the middle has started to loosen up, I see more and more interaction between things. But as an example, I can say that I worked in obesity, which is probably considered endocrinology, or type 2 diabetes is for some, and I had a discussion once with a colleague. We were talking about appetite and obesity, and my colleague goes, well, that's psychology. So boom, over here, and we cannot deal with that. Whereas I go, well, it's the person, and the person is biology, and the decisions, everything that person does is biology. It should be able to be solved in one go, and it's part of the whole picture. So if we think about what's required to change this, you can say we should be in agreement. This is what is required for a radical new model to enter the world. It should be in agreement with the existing biological principle, or if not, it should be able to identify overlooked or inaccurate observations. Also, it should be able to address all data. That means all the observations are meaningful, not just cherry pick observations or ignore inconvenient truths. It should also be able to treat problems that existing techniques either cannot or only do partially, or do with great difficulties. And I don't know if this is totally necessary, but it's always nice that it does explain everything elegantly and simple and resolve any confusion. And so if you think about all of this and think about some of the things that has come up, I can mention that the Australian medical doctor, Barry Marshall, who said that stomach ulcers are caused by Helicobacter bacteria, he got laughed at in the beginning. No one, wanted to believe him. And in essence, he had to reinfect himself. He found the bacteria only because the routine of throwing out the petri dish was delayed. So, and it takes longer apparently to grow this bacteria. So he was lucky to achieve a sample of it. He actually drank it himself and was surprised to see that already after 2 days he had symptoms. And I think it was on day 5 he had someone do a put a video camera down his ventricle and observed that there were ulcers. So everyone thought that that was a very weird thing to come up with. Just remember that every important idea in science sounds really strange at first. So if you think about who are more likely to make this breakthrough, and I think Grant already said it, he's an engineer, so he comes from a different world. And that's exactly what Thomas Kuhn is saying here, that individuals who break through by inventing a new paradigm are almost always either very young men or very new to the field, whose paradigm they change. These are men who, being little committed by prior practice to the traditional rule of normal science, are particularly likely to see that those rules no longer define a playable game and conceive another set that can replace them. So if you think about it, subcellular psychobiology sums up a lot of the things that both are experientially felt, but also has a biological cause, just mentioning some of the things here. And so if you think about subcellular psychobiology as being something that can actually explain the interaction between all these areas. And one example of that is that take voices, schizophrenic voices, which is a psychiatric diagnosis, put it into our psychobiology model, and we found out that it's fungal. Again, this one has not been verified, which is one of the things that I'm saying is in my way sometimes, that we don't have money, we don't have resources, we don't even know if we can cultivate this. Is it viable in oxygen environment, blah, blah, blah. So, but the treatment is to become immune to this, and that works. It does take away the voices in these cases. Other examples are OCD, autism. I should have put Asperger on as which is actually not the same as autism, even though they have been categorized as such in the newest version in the American DSM. That's 5, I think. Anxiousness, depression, shingles, which is a virus, it can be solved by immunology. We only have one case of that, but it was really dramatic. Lyme's disease, you see, I think a lot of rheumatoid clients might have Lyme's disease. It's a bacteria, and immunity to that one can solve the problem. We have a TBI process. We also know how to treat some types of vertigos and some types of pain, but like we discussed before, we don't know everything about that. There's probably a lot of more. Irritable bowel syndrome, which is a box of a lot of things. There are some ways around it. We don't know everything there either, as well as we're researching type 1 diabetes and don't have a treatment there yet. But as you can see, by putting it into the model, it turns out that they interact in different ways here. So just to summarize from this talk here up until now, so why people do react to a new paradigm. My hypothesis is that it is internal conflicts that create discomfort. There can be fear of change, and maybe if some researchers like myself, if I was still in the regular scientific field, maybe I don't want to be outside a conventional, I want to stay inside, and a lot of funding inside that is based on that you stay inside, so don't go outside the box. Fear that people will be unkind, so don't want to expose myself. There is people outside a new paradigm may feel threatened on identity, beliefs, and values. And as well, people outside a new paradigm may feel threatened on income, job security, and prestige. So these are all things that I've experienced and seen, and that can play into both moving things forward in our institute, but also moving it out into the world. And if you think about it, our institute core purposes is to find good cures for humanity. So finding cures for incurable diseases is sort of like a phrase we use in research. And if you're a therapist, you might have this one, the method for fundamental change in human psyche, as an overall purpose. Because what we do really creates difference. And so we do this because we want to help people end the suffering. And also, like with this conference, we want to share and exchange knowledge. We want to learn and improve techniques and models, our techniques and models. We want to expand networking colleagues. We want to grow our impact on humanity. But many people have these negative reactions and disbeliefs. So how do we do this? So this is leading up to the talk later today and tomorrow. And you can say that when you bring something, a new paradigm out, what is probably the single most prevalent claim is that this paradigm can solve something that led the previous paradigm into a crisis. And I'm not even sure if, except for some parts of the world that actually has realized that some of the things that's going on in the medical is a crisis. There's just not improvement in a lot of treatments. And then there is the whole area of the problem with the money and hospitals not having money in the States, for example, to keep up their capacity, and just lots of issues. So if you think about, this is my last slide here. So what's required for successful integration of a new idea? If you take this blue line, this is the normal distribution of people in the world. And the yellow line here is how a new idea is integrated. At first, it just, not many people know about it, then some people know, and it starts gaining interest because it's effective. And as it grows, all of a sudden it's the main, this is when you enter mainstream and everything about what you do is accepted. So if you think about, we're in this innovation as an institute. So we try to find ways to solve problems, but we're in the early phases, and we have not been seen, or we have not been acknowledged or taken into consideration here. There is a group called early adapters. They are adopters. They actually know that there is a problem that needs to be solved, and they're actually looking for who can solve this, or what are the different methods that can be used out there. And if you think about it, this would be a good group to seek partnerships with, but how to find them? This is what I'd like to talk about later, or hear your input on. Because the majority of the market over here, the early majority and late majority and laggards, they are not yet open or know that it has any need in essence. So that was what I wanted to say and share. Thank you.
Thanks, Kirsten. Just looking to see if we've got any questions. Oh, there you go. So Evan Fee is asking, what states the Institute offers would be very helpful for people who researchers in any field to have? So do you need any particular states of consciousness to do this research, I think is the question.
The research that we do here? I think the best research state is actually where you...
Sorry, I was saying helpful for people who researchers in any field to have.
Oh, in any field, yeah. Oh, in any field, I mean, definitely having an overview of everything that goes on. So that is not thinking in linear perspective. We actually have a peak state that allows people to see things in 3 dimensions. That means you can actually perceive problems in ways that allows you to see what's missing. It's a very rare state, and you can only, I mean, there are only a few people in each university maybe who are able to do that, and they're really kicking and moving things forward. But besides that, I think any peak state is really helpful, you know, being in a good space where you're not affected so much. So I can say for sure that if I am in a really good space, talking to other scientists and sharing, it's not a problem. And I do research, and like Grant says, that some of the issues that come up sometimes in yourself can bring you down for a period of time. So in those period of times, I prefer not to have that interaction because I can feel more vulnerable. So, but definitely the 3 dimension of seeing things and understanding how things are interacting. So again, it's instead of thinking linear and compartmentalized, this state allows you to see things in perspective, and you can see where the world is missing pieces. You might not be able to find them, but you can see that this part is missing, and it allows you to better focus in on it.
Okay, thank you. Got a question from Alexis Edwards. Is the model that was just shown, that you just went through, in regards to clients, marketing, the public, or is it about researchers and science, or all of the above?
Yeah, there are 2 different topics, and I actually think that for that one, it might be both, because what I could see is the people that I interacted with in conferences were I could definitely feel that this was not in a, it was a very quick discussion, and the other person just went off. It was like a rejection, you can say, to our work. That was definitely a person who would be the last one to incorporate a new technology because their goal is something else in the moment, or resistance. I don't know. Sorry, what was the question again? I'm not sure if I answered it.
So it was around the model around, she said, yes, I can see that. So I think you've answered the question.
Yeah. Okay. So I think it's more application related to, getting researchers interested in our work and collaboration. It's both in a sense, but mostly application.
Excellent. So thank you very much for your time, Kirsten. Probably time for us to move on to our next speaker.
Yep.
Thank you for watching. For more information, please visit www.pigstates.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel.